Mattriachy's never on a Wednesday?
No.
What is wrong with me, Nick?
You're a little goofy today. That's what it is.
Oh my gosh. It's been a day. So, Nick, pitch your comic while I go ahead and shoot the link around because
Sure.
I'm so far behind. Oh my goodness.
That's right. I'll take up some screen time here.
There you go.
But my eyes are crusty. I can't get them to. They need to moisturize themselves or whatever.
Tell what we're even doing. I'm gonna give you the big screen.
Okay. All right.
Look at that.
Yeah. So we just launched the latest chapter of Demon Hunter Raven, and that launched on Monday at 12, and we are just cruising. We're at 75 backers as of this moment. So if you want to go on a Kickstarter and search up Demon Hunter Raven, I'm putting everything on there from the previous allocated chapters I've been on there, but it follows a young kid who gets a relic fused to him that grants him the ability to become like this and get this supernatural armor, and he goes and battles demonic forces and vampires and demons and witches and ghouls and whatever you can think of he's going to go up against. Excuse me. But yeah, each one is about like 60 pages, but we're collecting volume 1, which is going to be close to over 100 pages, and then this one is funding for the printing of chapter 3, which is 68 pages, but the deluxe version, which is going to have like 40 pages extra of story, will feature characters by Calvary Collective's Paul Tucker, Sunchild, and then Lucas A. Ferreira's Mr. Ghost, and then a really cool expansion on the myths and lore called History of the Demon Hunters, which is just going to be diving more into the history, as it's called, of the particular characters and the establishments and things that are part of this world. I'm a big fan of Assassin's Creed, and I love how they explore history and they intertwine it into their mythology and their story and how it moves and progresses the story forward. So that's kind of what I'm doing too, is I'm using history to progress the story. So a lot of what's happening in this History of the Demon Hunters will tell you more about what's happening in the current day stuff. And as the story progresses, it will make more sense as we go on. Do you need it? No, but it will just add more nuance. It'll add more subtle things to you as you read it. So it'll explain some backstory that we can't always. I mean, we're doing large books, but we can't always cram every little piece that we want in there.
Of course, you need it, Nick. Come on.
I don't know. I don't know.
You absolutely have to have it. That's how it works.
Right. But the deluxe version is going to be a campaign thing only. That version is only being printed for this one. Otherwise, you can get the standard, which is what will be for everyone, whether it goes out anywhere else. But if you are investing in this campaign, the deluxe version has a cover by Stephen Cummings, who is the Marvel artist for Squadron Supreme coming out, Marvel's Champions with Jim Zub, and also he worked on Image's Wayward with Jim Zub as well. And he did this fantastic cover. It's got Raven and Violet fighting against the Coven, which is what the story is about. And it just looks marvelous. And it's got some of the bad guys in the background. So yeah, that's going on right now, and it ends on March 20th. It's on a Friday. If we got like 20 by 9 o'clock tonight, it'll be 21 more days from here. So estimate around that point. So yeah, and I went back to previous stuff and recolored some stuff so that it's all presented in the same manner. So you're not just only get one random black and white thing. Oh, hello. We have more people now. I can stop talking. Good.
You've increased by 50%.
There we go.
Well, and I wasn't on screen before because I was sharing the links to the Facebooks and the Twitters because that's the kind of day it is. Oh my goodness. Metal, how's it going? He has shown up with his elbow cough, which I got to say is the most hygienic person in our chats. That's so.
He's wearing a mask in his profile picture, though. That's
no, I don't think so. Let's take another look here. No. Hence the elbow cough.
I have no mask, but I will give you at least 3 mask emojis if you need them.
Good enough.
Grand. It's grand. So, guys, how's it going?
Very good.
I know we've already started. It's a weird show, Matt. It's a weird show. That's just it's bizarre. I'm late, obviously. That's thing one. I was stupidly late. And I get here, I turn my computer on, I'm getting ready to sign in, and the whole thing just shuts off.
At least it didn't do it in the middle of the stream. I
was plugged in and everything. I know, right? I got the technical difficulties out of the way first thing.
Yeah, that's new.
That's and then I as on the way here, Doug Tenaple texts me and he's like, "I don't think I can make it, man." And he's got a good excuse, but he's not going to be here. So if you guys have tuned in or you're looking for Doug to talk about Turlock, I'm sorry. You'll have to do that some other time. It's not happening. And Tonic Mole, who I was super excited to talk about this topic with, like his internet service like took a dive today at about 2:00. So he was not sure he was going to be able to resurrect it. So this might be it.
Oh dear.
Yeah, this might be the show.
It's the three of us. Can we carry it?
Yeah. And Nick was just talking about Demon Hunter Raven. Is crowdfunding right now. You are 100 and how many % funded so far?
I am 157% funded. So, it's all right.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
So still got 22 more days or 21 more days to go. So, we got a lot more to do.
That's pretty cool. So here's a question for you. How many people are buying like everything? Is that because you're selling the big book? Yeah,
I would say it's evenly half and half because returning customers are coming back and they're buying the next book in the series, and then new people are just buying up everything. So I've got my backer count is a little skewed because it's a lot of new people, and the people that I previously had on the last backer kick, well, I went and hired them, so they're working for me now, and like Matt's going to be writing a story. So I don't know if that's good.
No, I am. I've got a story.
I meant to point this way.
Yes. Engineering is difficult.
Yes. This.
I better get on that.
Yeah, because I'm gonna start drawing that next week now. I'm finishing up colors for a different thing and moving right into the next thing. So I'll be sending you pages here in probably 2 weeks from now. But
hey, Tyler has appeared in the chat.
A random Tyler appearance.
Random Tyler. In the wild. So Matt, how are you doing?
Yeah. Doing pretty good. I'm things are melting now. I don't know how things are on your end of the world, but we had 20 below degrees last week, and now it's about 50 above. So all the snow is being vaporized, but we had a fresh 8 inches the other day. So it's spring wants to happen. We just have to wait it out.
Yeah. We had very similar, but we only got probably 8 inches of snow. So most of the stuff was actually pretty close to melted. It was getting that way this weekend. So this week was been, scooping snow. So we're not having ice slicks. That's been the biggest thing.
Oh yeah.
Like Monday and Tuesday it was rain. It's been of course warm enough to melt all day long. And then you're like, okay, now we've got giant piles of ice everywhere. So how do we manage all of that?
And we experienced the same power shortages. We were part of the same grid that Texas was on. And so we didn't get nearly as bad as they did, but we had to share what electricity we could spare up here. That meant brownouts and traffic lights being taken out for a day. And it was a little awkward.
I know.
Electricity being randomly shut off for half an hour at a time. But that didn't happen to us, but it happened to other people. I have no idea how they did that. But when it's 20 below, you get a little nervous when things like the power turn off.
Yeah, I can see that. We didn't have any people. Your text just came through.
Wow, great service I had out here.
Good timing.
But yeah, we didn't have any. Everybody was like freaked out, and there was warnings about, oh no, we may experience temporary brownouts and no problems at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know everybody. Oh, I didn't. Okay, so I got to interrupt my own story. Tyler's accusing me of stopping numbering my shows. It's not that I've stopped. It's that I haven't gone back and fixed any of the last 3 episodes. So like I've been a very bad host. I usually try to go back in because it automatically, using this Restream platform, it automatically generates the titles.
Oh.
Which is nice when I'm running behind. But I usually go back in and then I'll add people's links and all that kind of stuff. And I haven't done that in a month. So
For shame.
I know. So this is actually show 104, I think. Maybe 105. I'm not sure. It's not excuses. It's reasons. I'm not saying it's okay, Tyler. I'm just saying it's the facts. So anyway, yeah. We didn't have any of the brownouts, and everybody was panicking about it. But I don't know. It's just part of. I think everybody's forgotten. Like that's just part of life when I was growing up. You always, I was in when I was a kid in Oklahoma in this is 87 or 88. We had a ice storm that took out the city power for half of Tulsa for like a half a week, So, we spent like 1 or 2 nights in our house, in one room, huddled together for warmth. And then we found some friends there on the other side of town where the power wasn't out. And so we went over there, it was just one of those things where, people go through stuff like that. And when my dad was growing up, they had bad storms on the ranch, and you'd fire up the wood burning stove, and you just live with it. So I guess I don't know. Everyone, when people panic about that kind of stuff, that's part of living. People lived for thousands and thousands of years before we invented central heat. So
they lived, but they didn't live very long. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It depends on what part of the world you were in, but I think people figure it out though. Just got to prepare. It's like the other day, somebody was talking about how I can't remember the phrase it was. Somebody made some sort of comment on Twitter, and I said that everywhere is in walking distance if you take the time and you plan.
And you plan, yeah.
just prepare, and you can walk to anywhere.
One would say we're not very good at preparing or planning ahead anymore in this current day and age.
That's probably fair. Fair. So tonight's topic, and it looked like it's just going to be us guys. So,
all right.
Tonight's topic is geography. What? You're leaving? This is not worth my time to be here. I'm a huge success now. I don't need to hang around. Slum it on this tiny show. We're talking about geography and comics. And so, first of all of us, every single person on this panel, have used real places in their comics. So, Matt Johnson, tell us about it, man.
That's me.
What real places have you used, and why?
Well, the why is very simple. It's because when you're doing a comic, you have to come up with ideas, and for most of us, the easiest draw for inspiration is everything that's around us. So, I could get into a little bit of that. I brought Hold Yourself, a PowerPoint presentation, and I might have to experiment with the sharing screen settings if I bring that up here, because we were using a different platform yesterday.
Yes, yes, we did. But it's very similar. It's on the bottom of the screen, there is an icon that says share screen.
Oh, yeah.
It looks like a little computer with a cross across it.
I get that. I'm betting as soon as I hit it, that we'll get some recursive action happening.
Yes.
At least until I
push
hit
the button, and then it'll ask you all kinds of stuff.
Oh, good.
Got it.
I'm learning as we go, and that's okay. So
that's absolutely fine.
I'll get my screen up here. Did you see this? Just switch over over for me.
Here it comes.
Uh-oh. So,
Oh, very nice.
okay. Okay, so if you're seeing what I'm seeing, this is the comic I did for about 6 years, college, called Cortland. And that's kind of where I started. And if you haven't seen that, the whole thing is over at cortlandcomic.com. I kind of have that separated from the comic I'm doing now, but it's basically same characters, a lot of same stuff happening. In 2008, I decided, after doing a comic very, very focused on some cartoonish villains based on Apple computers and Apple computer, switched over kind of to more of a Dilbert style. I have to mention this thing. In the middle of doing Cortland, inspiration from wherever I could, I also did some comics based on the people I was hanging out with at Comic Genesis, where the comic was hosted. And I called that Forumies, after our forum users. And that kind of comes into play a little bit in a second, because I'll switch over here. I started out at 5 in 2009, kind of breaking away from some of that. I wanted to try doing a comic more in the style of a newspaper comic, with more emphasis on daily gags and that sort of thing. But before I go there, I wanted to just briefly mention going way, way back in history. This is about, wow, it's got to be 15 years now. There was this thing called the Daily Grind Iron Man Challenge. And I don't know if anybody remembers this. This is something I learned recently. But I was part of this group. It was basically a contest to update your comic once every day, every weekday, for basically forever. And anyone who skipped a day or couldn't complete a day was kicked out. And, you know, we had about probably 36 different comics participating. Everyone put in $20. There was a pot of $1,120. And this thing went on for well over a decade, until people basically forgot about it, and the website it was hosted on no longer existed. And it was down to basically 2 guys who were doing their comics, and I think they eventually decided to just split it. I that's what I'd heard, but this was basically where I got my start in my comic, and a lot of the inspiration I drew came from the people who were there and the people I hung out with online. So anyway, but for real places, I got my start right in Lincoln, Nebraska, and that's where I obviously lived at the time. And as far as geography goes, I didn't bring the city itself into my comic as part of a plot point. It was just sort of it's in the background. This is where the characters live. This is what the things they do. Once in a while, I would have my main character eat a rub. And if you don't know what that is, it's basically a sock filled with ground beef and a cabbage. But it's a popular fast food item around here. So I continue dropping just little things in the background. For me, this is actually what helps sometimes just give a comic a little different character than other comics. It's not necessarily a big important part of the story, other than this is a real place, these are real people, and if anyone's interested, those are real buildings. One of my characters is looking down basically on the city of Omaha there, and what's really useful about drawing a comic nowadays is that you can draw from basically Google Maps, Street View, and also the 3D aerial view. If you need any reference points of any part of the city you're living in, or any major city you want to explore without actually going there, it's amazing. For example, other places I drew from are the place in Omaha, downtown Omaha, the old market. These 2 panels on the right no longer exist in real life. That's the Gene Leahy Mall that's been basically torn up. It's going to be replaced with something in a couple of years, but it was very picturesque at the time. And when I drew this comic, I didn't have any visuals. I had plenty of pictures I'd taken myself, but I thought, I can put this in my comic if I want to. It doesn't have to exist in real life, but it's probably one of the most visually recognizable parts of Omaha. This is the place where I worked for about for a couple years, and this was the inspiration for basically the entire comic strip. My character worked at this little print shop, and that building itself no longer exists either, only in Google Street View, which allows you to go back in time, fortunately. But it wasn't. I'll put it this way: my comic, everything in my comic is basically a true story, but all the characters are different, just for legal purposes. Other places that appear in my comic also exist in real life, just different locations. Nothing recognizable other than I needed visual references to draw from. So other places I've worked appear in the comic. At least this one is out at 5. A lot of the stories I came up with in the comic were based on things that actually happened, but usually it's nobody who actually experienced those things would recognize them, other than, the people who were directly involved. And it's just, you can't draw a comic for, what is it now, close to 20 years without having basically every part of your life coming into play with it somehow. It's a different restaurant. Probably my favorite restaurant in Omaha is called Louis M's Burger Lust. And my characters travel. It's in South Omaha on Vinton Street. And my characters go there. In my comic, it's called Pepe's because I needed one of my characters to own a restaurant. Other places in Lincoln, the famous Joyo Theater, which I've never been inside, but this is in the Havelock neighborhood. Wanted my characters to go to a movie theater, so why not just pick the one that was down the street from me? Another actual location is what I call in the comic the Secret Bridges. And these are a pair of unused, or what's the word? Not discontinued, but decommissioned parts, the Rock Island Railroad. They used to run north and south through Lincoln. The bank, the Union Bank on O Street, used to be the train station there. So if you look at an aerial map of Omaha, you can see where these tracks used to run, because much of it is now a bike path. With my comic, I actually just went exploring. This is part of Wilderness Park now. And just exploring it in real life was kind of fun. And I decided, well, why not have some of my characters visit there? It seemed like a very interesting kind of a place. They had some different warning signs: danger, don't cross that bridge. So I thought, well, why not have some of my characters come on down, explain and explore it a little bit. I learned in later years this actually has some real history in Nebraska. It was this bridge here, one of the 2 bridges in the comic. It's was the site of the largest mass murder in the state.
Oh, jeez.
Which I didn't learn until later. In 1894, someone somehow sabotaged the train tracks, and it caused a giant train wreck. I believe 1450 people were killed in that crash. So when I learned this, of course, I felt like I had to put it in my story somewhere. The bridges were part of my comic for a decade before I knew any of this history. But when reading about them online, I eventually what happened is I were in real life and I saw a plaque. There's a plaque there today commemorating this crash. So if you go there in real life, you'll be able to see that. I saw that, took note of it, did a little more research online, found more information, including the picture here that I used as sort of a visual. Of course, Exarban Village is another location. Appears a couple times in the comic. I work right next to this park, so I go here all the time with the kids to play on lunch breaks or that sort of thing. What's really kind of funny about this place is that I was visiting him, and an older gentleman was talking to me about when they first built this park. He was telling me that it was actually several stories deeper than it appears on the surface. When they were constructing it, they had barricades, fences surrounding the entire facility, wouldn't let anyone go inside. And apparently, he said that the Air Force, which we have an Alpha Air Force base here in Omaha, they were doing something there, in something very deep underground. They didn't want anyone to see what it was. Now, I didn't know if that had any validity in real life, but I thought, well, in my comic, why don't I just make that that door in the bottom of the spire there be a secret elevator that goes down to some sort of a secret base underground. And little things like that in my comic, I have no idea if they're have a basis in reality, but it was just sort of a fun thing to include. Other places my characters have gone, Venice Inn in Omaha, another beautiful location that no longer exists. Was on Maple Street for many decades before they tore it down. It was right next to the old Exarban racetrack there. Gorats Steakhouse on Center Street. I had my reception dinner here back in 2008. What made this place kind of stand out for me, because my dad was trying to help ask me to find a place people could go, and he wanted to have steak, and that was about it. So I found this place. It's well known that Warren Buffett likes to eat here. So that's kind of a story that people like to tell about it. I actually bumped into Warren Buffett himself back in 2011 at the Bohemian Cafe. He just happened to be eating there for his birthday, which is one day apart from mine, and I was there for my birthday. So that was sort of a surprise. He's also appeared in my comic, of course, as a villain. So that's a whole other story. Real people take major roles in my comic because why not? But I never use their full names. That's one thing I don't do. Is he's only referred to as Warren. He doesn't have a last name. Other characters like Steve Jobs is only referred to as Steve. So you can presume that they are really different from any real person who might have a lot of money and lawyers.
Very true. Very true.
And it's certainly never actually been villains. That's an important one to remember too.
Well, I honestly think of them as villains, but in I guess in my comics think that villains need to make sense. That they're not most people aren't actually malicious. They just have goals that are come into conflict with those goals. So you never know. This here is should be recognizable to anyone who lives in Omaha. It's a Val's Pumpkin Patch, which is something of like an autumnal Disneyland with not so many rides, but several acres of different activities. People come with their kids in the fall. It's only open around October, but obviously I wanted to give my characters real life place. This was more recently in my comic. I decided, just for the fun of it, to have every comic that came out, of course, that the time of year that it was being published. So for the entire duration of 2020, if it's fall, they're doing fall stuff. If it's in the summer, they're watching fireworks on the 4th of July. If it's springtime, they're going to be, or if it's Lent, they're going to be going to a fish fry, which is a thing in the Midwest. So all these things I thought would be kind of fun to have, of course, in real life. Now, of course, 2020 did not turn out the way I had predicted. So the things my characters did in the comic were things that actually got to happen in real life, like they normally would. So I think at the end of the year, I kind of gave up on planning that way, because it was not a year that was very easy to plan ahead. Like I said, my characters visit fish fries, which apparently I didn't know was a thing. It's kind of a Midwestern thing, but between Mardi Gras and Easter, different churches, particularly the Catholic churches in our city, would have very large fish fries. Thousands of people would attend. They would drink beer while standing in line for hours or more with their friends, and just a very popular thing for people to do. Last year, I got to go to one, and then COVID happened, and basically it was all a drive-through experience after that. And for the most part, it's still that way now. Nebraska City, if you know Nebraska City, they have apples there, and every year they have the Applejack Festival. Naturally, I had to have my characters go there. Kimmel Orchard is a real orchard there, and of course I had to have Jimmy Kimmel be the cashier, because that's something I can do. I don't know if anybody noticed that.
Fallen.
Well, I don't know if anyone even noticed that, but it just seemed like I needed someone to be at the cashier, so why not have Jimmy be there? No, I got to
admit, I had not picked up on that.
So, Yeah, he'll always be the guy on the Man Show with Adam Carolla to me. That's all.
Yeah, same here.
So this series, I did a story in 2017 that I called "Stay Hungry, Stay Foolish." I don't know where this is on the left, but it's from the back cover of the Whole Earth catalog, which was sort of a countercultural magazine in late 60s, early 70s. Steve Jobs mentioned it in a very well commencement address at Stanford University. So I took that picture and kind of based a whole story just around the idea of one character in particular kind of exploring, finding himself, traveling the country. One place he went in the comic was, I called it Galton, Nebraska. And this is based entirely on Crestbard, South Dakota. It's a place I've never been before. But thanks to Google Street View, I could visit there and I could use pictures of the street as references. But what it's best known to me as is the home of Keen Spot Comics, which is where Keen Space came from, which is where Cortland first appeared. And their headquarters is in an abandoned building on the north end of town. And because I had some characters in my comic from the Foramies subcomic I'd mentioned earlier, who are directly based on characters who are in reality living and working in that school, I decided, why not? I'll have my character visit them. And these characters here, based on the Crosbys, who started Keen Spot. Now, unofficially, of course, in my comic, it's called Ink Spot, and they have completely different identities. But the story spans more than a decade from the characters on the left and the character on the right. Well, other places my character visited in that story, New York City. Into that city myself, but had plenty of visual references of places he could go. And Stanford University. One other part of my story involved Steve Jobs, or my character Steve, giving a commencement address. Real life, it was at Stanford University in 2005, and I wanted him to have some exposition, and I thought, well, why not have him walk through the campus? And it was discovered to get an aerial view using Google 3D maps, and I could have actually my characters walk through the campus because somebody, I don't know if it was someone wearing doing a Google Street View on a bike or something, but somebody went through the entire campus and got pictures of all the different buildings, ways, and different places there. So it was very easy. The one trick, of course, is that every view is about, I would say, 7 feet in the air, it seems. So I had to adjust the perspective a little bit. Otherwise, I would have to draw my characters a little farther, a little lower than I wanted to. And of course, Cupertino, California, the home of Apple Computer. You can see Apple headquarters there on the left, and in the background, the new donut-shaped headquarters of theirs. Other fun places to include, needed to have Steve Jobs having a conversation at a restaurant. Why not go to Google and find out what his favorite sushi place was and just put it in the comic? Because Jin's-sho Sushi, why not? I needed to draw someplace, and you can get in and out in every different angle. That picture on the right is one of the birthplaces here, the Bandley 3 building in Cupertino, basically where the Macintosh was invented. You can only see like a few details there, but that's basically a historic picture there. Other real-life pictures. Now, if you don't recognize this is a scene in one of my comics. One of these guys in the middle of the left picture is kind of based on Kevin Flynn from Tron. I had a character sort of based on Jeff Bridges in my story there, but all of those people surrounding the Macintosh on the left are actual Apple developers there. You can even see Steve Jobs looking a little irritated in the background. But the scene itself came from Pirates of Silicon Valley, which was a 1999, I believe, film on TNT that really inspired the whole Cortland comic. It was a very good movie. They took basically every scene of that film is based on something that either happened or was rumored to have happened in real life. And it made for such an interesting story and really painted Steve Jobs as a kind of a villain that I thought made an interesting character for my comic eventually. So the one last thing I have to put in here, because I wanted to do it last time, and I did get around to it, was some of the a few of the little politics in my comic. And I try very hard, and not easy sometimes, to keep things nonpartisan. But I live right next to Iowa, and every 4 years we have basically everybody running for president comes to our town. So I thought, especially last year, I thought, why don't I just drop a little bit of the election into the comic, because I could have someone running for president in my comic. I could have some sort of a sinister backstory going on. If you look at the crowd here, you can see Matt actually in the crowd right underneath the I in the word Clint.
Oh yeah.
I didn't spot that.
So anyway, the one fun thing about being, because I'm kind of a political junkie, I try not to put much of it in my comic, but it's really easy to walk across the river every now and then and meet people who will be who are running for president. I could, getting a picture of this guy, for instance, was super easy back in 2019. But what's even easier than just, because honestly, this was an event with about 150 people in it. So if you just show up a little bit before the doors open, you can get in and meet basically the next president. It's not that hard. But what's even easier is trolling the guy. This is me coming to see him again when he came back in November. And I brought along something for him to autograph.
Corn pops.
I heard he's a bad dude. And I hung out with a lot of bad boys. So anyway, so I'm right there in the front of the rope. If you see that guy right behind Mr. Biden there, that guy saw what I was doing. So I was a little bit afraid first. I thought I was going to get into trouble or something. But what he did was, see, Mr. Biden there was signing autographs, signing things for people. That guy behind him took his pens away, kind of nudged him and took all of his pens away. So when he got to me, I was trying to offer the box right here. His staffers took it away from me before I could give it to him. So you can see about how close I got there. But, I wasn't trying to be mean or anything. I just thought, how cool would it be to have a signed box of corn pops from Mr. Biden, who had such an interesting relationship with Mr. Corn Pop.
It would have been amazing. Even this is amazing.
That's hilarious.
But see, it almost didn't even happen because I was on my way there and I just passed a Hy-Vee and I thought, oh, wait a second. They probably have a box of corn pops. Why not try? So, but yeah, the lady there, she was very nice, but she was like, "Oh, let me take that for you." and for the record, I did get it back.
Oh,
I did get it back, but it was not signed. I got it back, but it was not signed.
That's unfortunate.
Oh my god!
He did not sign my corn pops. I was disappointed.
Oh my goodness.
So anyway, that's my comic and some of the real places in there. Actual apartment complex my wife lived in before we got married behind there.
Okay.
Because I used to live. So this is what you'll see on my comic right now because it's on hiatus until I figure out how to do more comics in a political environment that's really hard not to take sides. I'll be honest. I found myself drawing a lot more comics related to the election and that were hitting a lot closer to home with a lot of the tension going on that I really wanted to, because my comic is generally pretty lighthearted. And
I want to point out to anybody who catches this, who goes and checks out at 5 stuff, and I highly suggest it. I love Cortland. I've read all of it a couple of times. And we'll actually talk about that when I get to my presentation about geography, because that actually ties in. But the whole thing about it I want to get into too is the thing is like Matt was working on this story since 2018, right? So like there's jokes that were written that are really close to the things that shaped up that were drawn 6 months ago. So
yeah.
that have been plotted out, like because we've been talking about stuff for a while behind the scenes.
I generally felt awkward after here's the thing. In my election, the election obviously rigged, and there were ballots stuffed with there's a comic I have where a truck is delivering boxes and boxes of ballots just mysteriously in the middle of the night. I drew that before the election, and it didn't obviously come out until after the election because I was drawing. I mean, I had them scheduled ahead of time, but when it came out, I felt like people are going to look at this and think that I'm I don't know. They'll think that I basically. I mean, I'll put it this way: if I said what I thought that they would say, I would get banned because the YouTube album would pick up things.
Right. But it's all
conspiracy theories that I'm not a site right now.
And first of all, let's remind everybody that this is a comic, and second of all, my channel's so small, I don't know that I'm not monetized anyway, so I'm not worried about that. But it's eerie how much we're getting, the whole environment was. So Matt got a hold of me. He emailed me on the 7th and said, "We're on hiatus indefinitely." Basically.
We're in a time when it's very difficult comic without taking sides or a political comic.
And if you go back, and like I said, I really advise reading Out at 5. I love it. I love virtually every strip. Even if some of them were a little hard to take in the last year. Actually, most of them are super wholesome because like Angie, who's like one of the started as a supporting character and kind of evolved into one of the main characters. It's like her first year married, and so you get to see them pregnant and they're adorable couple and they have a baby and the whole thing. And as somebody who's now 20 years past that point, right? Because my kids are grown now, it's sort of like pulls on the little heartstrings, tugs on them. Oh, I remember that, and I remember when my Amy was there, and it was so so anyway. It was. I think they did a really good job of it. I really enjoyed it wholeheartedly. So.
Well, I've honestly been wanting to draw something like that for a couple of years now. If you remember, back in 2011, I took my first hiatus because I thought, I have a kid now. I'm going to have my whole life experience. What I draw from for my daily comic is going to be changing completely. So I thought I better start kind of planning. I thought one of my characters has got to get married, have a family, have kids, because that's where my jokes are going to come from. And it took me about 7 years to get there before some of that started coming out. But,
Well, yeah. And one of the things, too, is you had because the one thing about the Cortland Out at 5 canon, right, is that it's office politics, like Gag Day stuff, and like this deep, like techno fantasy kind of thing. And it changes up between those things, and I think it does a really good job of because of the nature of the characters that were involved in all of that. But by the time that you were like touching those things in Out at 5 again, and after you came back from it, there were tons of these threads that were just hanging out there that you ended up having to deal with. And I think you tied them up really well. I think it makes a really fun narrative. So
I'll be honest, a lot of those threads happened because I was in that daily grind, and when you're drawing comics 5 days a week, you don't always have time. You don't have time to think ahead because I had a deadline and I needed to come up with something for these characters to do. That's kind of where Formies came from. Is I would have to draw another 5 comics for the week, and I'd have no clue what's going to happen next. So I thought, well, until I figure that out, I'll just draw some of this crap happening in the forums. Because it was oh my goodness, the days before social media were amazing because you had all these little close-knit communities that had all of the same drama and angst that you get on social media, but it was such a close-knit circle that it was almost like a family drama where you're making fun of each other, people are having a fit, people are getting angry, but you still love each other in a certain way.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and I mean, part of it is like there was still an anonymity to stuff back then, but like you were anonymous, but everybody knew your ID, right? They knew
Right, you had a
your
handle.
online persona.
Yeah.
So like they'd be just like, dude, the Flame Wars could follow you into your comic.
Yeah.
So So if you were a creator and you were, if you were partaking in an online community, you had, you can't, to be crass, you didn't shit where you ate.
Well, there's that, but there's also the idea that nobody would back in those days, if you were obnoxious, you might get banned from your forum, but nobody would try to track down who you were in real life and get you fired. That was not something that happened. That was basically too much trouble to be worth. They would just say, okay, you're out of here, you're banned, goodbye, and that was it.
Well, I mean, think about getting banned from your own forum. Then you lose the opportunity to communicate with the people reading your book. That was, on Comic Genesis, that was a big deal,
Oh, yeah,
because they hosted everything. So, but yeah. So Matt, you chose to use Lincoln and Omaha because that's where you're at, because that's where you were drawing your inspiration from.
Well, I'll put it this way. Most importantly, we did not have Google Street View back in 2002 and 4 and 5. So if I wanted to draw a movie theater, I couldn't necessarily just go, or I'll put it this way. I could find still images of maybe one angle I wanted. But if I wanted to actually go to a theater, if I wanted to go to a restaurant, if I wanted a picture that was a certain angle, if I wanted multiple angles, because my cursor are walking around, I would have to go there with my own little Mavica floppy disk digital camera, take as many pictures as you could put on 1.44 megapixels, come back and use those visual references from wherever you're having your characters visit.
One of the things that I think really was an added thing to it. I mean, this is once again speaking as a fellow Nebraskan, right? I mean, everybody, I don't care where you're from in the state, everybody's gone to Lincoln. Everybody knows it. And so everyone's like, hey, I know that. And so like it made it feel like tangible to it, right? And so when we started Forces, when Chris and I started Forces back in the day, we chose to set it in rural Wisconsin, right? And the reason we did this is not because either of us had been to Wisconsin. We wanted to tackle rural America, but not have it be too close to home, right? So we're both from the Wyobraska area, and so we wanted to have that, that Western, Midwestern feel, but not be too close to home. And so we picked Wisconsin because we were big Mystery Science fans too, and Mike Nelson was from Wisconsin. And so we said, this is some fertile joke material. We're going to run with it. Right?
Did you have any references to KTMA?
But what? I'm sorry?
Did you have any references to KTMA in Milwaukee?
No. That would have been a good one. But didn't even think about that. Well, and it all takes place on the other side of the state too. Because one of the jokes we stuck in there, we didn't have, it was just generic rural Wisconsin, but we decided to pin it down a little bit in a story. And actually, that was not, I didn't have that page ready. Before I get into that, because I have some photos prepared to share as well. But Nick.
No.
Yeah. No, it's your turn. It's your turn, man.
Okay.
It's my show, so I'll end with me. That's how it works.
I'm juggling multiple things at the same time here. It's
so now, and I don't expect you to necessarily have a slideshow put together, which is perfectly fine. But Demon Hunter Raven is set in the Twin Cities.
Yeah, right? And that's actually where I'm from. I live in rural Wisconsin, so that's kind of funny that yours is set in there, and I can tell you that it's aptly sucky, just as sucky as you portray it. So it's not too far off. I mean, it's cold. It's been -20 here and there. Yeah. No, it's nice. But yeah, talking about geographical places and why choose an actual place compared to making up a place? I think it has a lot to do with how you want to tell your story, the settings that because the setting itself can be very much a character unto itself. I mean, I think at this point we can all say that Gotham City is very much a character, just like Batman, the Joker, and all those places. It has a very sort of a lot of characteristics to it. I'm not sure we would all want to live there, but it's definitely got something to it. But I think that's kind of the fun part too, is if you have the right setting in the city, like let's say New York, it's already got characteristics to it, so you can already play with that sort of thing and plant your characters into this pre-made built arena and just have them go at it. And I think, was it Marvel's motto was to be the world, like the world outside, and
The world outside your window. Yep.
Yeah, and it's the heroes interacting within the real environment and taking on things. Maybe they've gone a little too far with that now and made up some of their own issues, whatever you want to say. But for me, when I chose the setting, it was because I wanted to take things of my own testimony as a Christian and then apply it to the story that I was telling. And since so much of that took place in Minneapolis, I wanted to use as the backdrop, such as the Fauché Tower, the light rail that's going across. I mean, and Chicago's not too far away from us, so there's a lot of architectural similarities between Chicago and Minneapolis and St. Paul, and this idea of the Twin Cities. It's not just Minneapolis or St. Paul. We call it the Twin Cities over here. So when you're thinking of superheroes, it's New York, and that's a big playground. But they're always centered within that region. And I was like, well, what if we were in two cities? Like, what if he was just within a branch? And sometimes people will refer to the Twin Cities as this rural network. Like you've got Bloomington, Chanhassen, Edina. And so it tends to be kind of a large developing area. So for me, choosing a geographical area just had to do with kind of setting even in a place that I don't think a lot of people have chosen. And not to get into political things here, but Minnesota has been kind of at the forefront of a lot of political or newsworthy stories this last year. I mean, our city burnt down this last year. It was a week-long affair, and it's home to a lot of. I mean, we're not on the news anymore, but I can tell you there's still stuff going on drastically from day to day. And I don't care what political side you're on. It's hard to see because there's certain areas that you can't drive into unless you're associated with certain affiliations. They'll straight out kick you out. That's neither here nor there based upon anything, but it's got a lot of story potential. There's a lot of things there that can be mined because nobody looks at Minnesota that way. I mean, we're kind of an Arctic zone, or it's like Wisconsin. I mean, like, who's going to look at them and be like, story potential? Yeah, that's it right there.
Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I mean, speaking about Mystery Science, I'm a big fan of that. One of the endearing aspects of it is its regionalness, right? Yeah. That it was in Minnesota. It had all of that in there. It was full of all of the rednecks and all that kind of stuff that was part of it. And like, I mean that lovingly. Like
I do too.
My mom's family is from rural Minnesota, right? Like Malacca and oh, come on, I can't remember the other city that they live in, but it's up north. It's in the lakes, And so like, I mean, they're talking about hot dish and everything, and I'm just like, dude, it's like seeing my family from up there.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
So I mean, that's all
very Midwestern.
I spend a half a day with my kin, and I've got the accent,
Yeah.
And the other side of my family are crackers from Wyoming. So I mean, it's just sort of.
Yeah, the further down south you go in Minnesota, it becomes more bland and bland. But that's kind of a fun thing too, is not a lot of people see Minnesota as this giant melting pot, because in the last, I want to say 15 years, the landscape has changed.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, working within the inner parts of the cities, the inner city doesn't always necessarily represent the outer part of it. Like once you start exploring outside of the city, it's a very different environment. But I enjoy just the different sort of areas that you can go to. I mean, I grew up in an area named like Watertown, Winsted, Mare, and those are tiny little pockets that maybe only have like maybe 600 people to them. And so once you get closer up to Minneapolis and that, you're hitting the thousands and the 10,000s and stuff like that. So you get a drastic change within an hour's travel of the dynamic of different groups of people. And it's for a comic or a story setting, you can play a lot of cool things like that. I don't want to say they're my favorite directors, but I've always enjoyed the Coen brothers because they've said a lot of their stories in this area. And they came to a lot of our colleges when we were there. They would do special talks, and they would talk about the settings and the rural settings in the Midwestern and the beautiful landscape. Because you can go from, and not to say that you can't do this anywhere, but you can go from just fields of corn to suddenly just large buildings in the Twin Cities area. So for me, as an artist, it was depicting those differences and choosing those different varieties of images to go through. Not to say that New York isn't interesting, but we've all seen New York thousands of times now. I mean, how many Marvel characters are set just in New York? I mean, it's probably the same idea of Batman's Gotham City. I mean, like, who would want to live there? You're constantly under threat and danger every single day. What about a whole state? So geographically speaking, I think even just a whole state, playing with the whole state, I mean, who's going to sit and run around and doing that? I mean, so yeah, I love that idea. We can't hear you.
I was coughing and I put myself on mute.
Oh, okay.
And I forgot about it. But like, even like, you know, look at like one thing I never picked up on when I was a kid reading X-Men comics, right? Graham Malkin Lane. It's on the island of Manhattan.
Right.
Like, I had the idea that the X-Men Academy was like somehow like upstate or something. No, it's on the same island.
Yeah. Move outside the area a little bit.
What? Well, actually, it might be Long Island rather than Manhattan Island. I might be wrong about that. But I mean, the point is that Westchester County, yeah, it's on Long Island. But I mean, that's the point. It's like it's like in the same like vicinity. It's like a really small area, and you know, like I live in Scottsbluff County, right? The county just north of me, Sioux County, is larger. I think Scottsbluff County is larger too than all of New York City, but Sioux County is larger than like all of New York City. It's larger than New Jersey, right? And it has like 1/20th of the population. I mean, it's like a whole lot of it's the Wild West there still. Like, people disappear in Sioux County, never to be heard from again.
Well, that's the same in North Dakota. I mean, that's just like a 6-hour drive from us. And I worked over there when the oil boom hit about 4 years ago. And when the oil boom hit over there, it was like seeing little towns of 600 that were only, you know, built for that capacity. Suddenly saw like the size of the Twin Cities just bombard them overnight. And turned it into a whole entire massive city, and their structures and facilities and just the inner workings of their city couldn't handle that exponential growth overnight.
Like in the straight to the south of us is a town called Kimball, Nebraska, and Kimball, Nebraska had that exact thing happen in the 70s. Right?
Okay.
Like and today, like it is like the like hollowed out meth-filled husk that was left behind. Still 40 years later, it has not recovered from the oil wells drying up there.
Wow.
Like 40 years ago. And that's like, I mean, like because the town, like it grew so fast and it just collapsed in on itself. And like, it just never, like the spirit of the town never recovered. And so it's
and it's not going to stay like that either.
Yeah.
They're not going to, it's a one-time deal, unfortunately.
And so it's a weird place. It's kind of a pretty place, but it's also sort of like sort of sad. But that's sort of, I mean, like we're also in a place where like a lot of rural communities aren't sustaining themselves anymore, and they're being, so that's kind of happening all at the same time.
Right.
Where people are just they're just, you know, they're not being able to make a living at it, and so you know, people give up and get despair. But so. When we, you know, I'm gonna transition to talk about my stuff now. So when we were setting up our universe back in 2005, Chris and I decided we wanted to do the DC Comics thing, right? So it's funny to talk about the geography because most of our geography in our little universe is fictional, right? We have 5 or 6 fake cities that are huge metropolises that our stuff happens in. And then we've got like little bits and places around there. But one of the things that I think was the best thing to come out of DC Comics was that when they were, a lot of the cities, when they're putting them together, through the years, they peppered them with this little geographic information.
Mm.
And many, many years ago, when I was a writer for Fanzing, the online DC Comics fan magazine, I had a regular column called the DC Atlas. And what I did is I took the different DC fictional cities and I researched the history of the cities they were based on. And then I had a research partner who helped me with figuring out some of the stuff from the comics, and then I wove them into the tapestry of a history. And so it was like telling the whole thing. So when we decided to do that with our universe, we did a very similar kind of a thing where we took a little bit of real world history and a little bit of imaginary history and put them together. And so I'm going to share with you guys some of those tidbits that are, some are real and some are not. And I want to kind of show how that works out here. But first, when we started Forces, actually, I'm going to do this one here. This is the superior setup I discovered this last week. Oh, wait, no.
Oh, yeah.
It was this one.
Yeah.
But anyway, when we started Forces, it was rural Wisconsin. We weren't going to have it be a place, like a specific place or anything. It was just an unnamed town. But I wanted to use this joke. And this is a spoiler for the story that we're updating on Webtoons right now. But if you want to, you can go to forceofgoodandevil.net and check out the whole thing. But here, the villain says, I was going to set up some bleachers out in the sun and have it all out on Highway 61. Which is, of course, a quote from Bob Dylan. Because Highway 6, so I ended up setting our town on Highway 61, which comes from, oh my goodness, I forgot the name of the town in Minnesota. I just placed out of my head. I had it already and I forgot the name of it. Anyway, there's a town on the east side of Minnesota near the Wisconsin border, and Highway 61 comes down through town and then south. And that Highway 61 Revisited is about like back in the like the 30s and 40s. It was part of the jazz trails, right? The blues trails, where blues musicians would tour and they'd end up in, I can't remember the name of it. It's going to bug me.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. Okay.
So I know 61, but I don't know this town.
Yeah. It's. Hang on. Sorry, internet. I'm so bugged by this right now. I have to look it up. And I'm gonna feel like an idiot when I look it up because it's just on the edge of my memory right now. So do.
We'll make it trivia right now. We'll all figure it out together.
It's not.
Once you say it, I'm going to be like, oh, yeah, of course, that place.
Yeah.
That sounds so familiar. Like, I know what you're talking about, but I don't know the town.
I am just.
I
was looking for it on the map and I'm not seeing it directly there. I'm going to have to. Duluth. It is Duluth.
Duluth?
Yes.
Oh, way up. Oh, by Duluth and Superior.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking way up there. Oh, I thought you were talking further down.
Yeah. No, the Yeah, the whole town. I mean, that's like
Bob Dylan's birthplace, isn't it?
Yeah, that's where Bob Dylan was born.
That's why the whole that's the subtext of the song. So I feel so stupid not remembering it all. Jeepers. That was a real letdown. Anyway, so the highway coming that all has to do with that. So that's why we ended up placing the it's in the thing. Oh my! I've ruined myself after that. Just I got off of my game. So the other thing we wanted to go ahead and do is we have we started doing this thing where we have road trips throughout forces, right? That set up where people come from. So we have from Wisconsin through. We talked about. Oh, I thought on this map. Oh, we had it actually going. Here's the edge of this is Colorado, where these guys were headed to Funky Town, which is part of Fremont City, one of our fictional cities. And we have it coming down from Nebraska down into Colorado. And that was a whole part of a thing on the road trips, because that's one of the things we want to put in there. Because if you live out in the West, out even the Midwest, road trips are just a thing you do. And so you end up going all over the place. So we ended up also telling a story about Buckskin Boone here. Oh, you can't see it in this one here. Let me see if I can zoom in, because the way it's we'll slide this here. This is Buckskin Boone. Buckskin is our love letter to chase everybody away. Buckskin Boone is our love letter to everything we love and hate about being from the Wyobraska area. And so we had thought it would be fun to stick him in New York City. And of course, this was in the early days, so we just used photos to patch Boone into. One of my favorite gags, and I'm going to have to zoom in to show you all this, guys. One of my favorite gags from this story is right down here. Boone's on the search for the Big Apple. And so he finds the Guggenheim Museum, and he immediately assumes that it's an apple. So yeah, that's silly.
I like this guy.
Oh man, Boone's great. He's one of my favorites. This is another one we went ahead and stuck at. This is a Buckskin Boone mystery that we told, and it ends at the Depot Plaza in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And so we have a Boone attacking this guy running across the quad there at the Depot Museum. And so that was that's something that we went ahead and did. This actually, I drew this whole thing. So apologies for the it's not great.
Now, see, there's a reason I have a template with a grid pattern on it. And anytime I need to do a picture like that, I overlay it in Photoshop with a grid and print it out. Or not print it out. I just keep it on the monitor next to me as I'm drawing over it.
Yeah.
Because perspective is not my friend.
Yeah, I get you. I get you entirely. So now here's another little bit. This is a character analog that that Matt actually helped me create, because we have some of his characters that guest starred in this particular Forces story.
Oh, nice.
And so the Color Co building is actually one of the ones that features in Cortland. And this is actually Ralph Gardeau did the art on this. And in this story, there's a whole bunch of little nods to stuff that is really there in Lincoln. And so in Lincoln, downtown Lincoln, there's all these causeways building to building that go from the Cornhusker Hotel down to all these different little like office buildings that have been patched together. And in our story, you can go and walk this exact path and find these real things. At least you could. I haven't been there in a couple of years. So I assume these things are still inside these buildings. But yeah, everything up to this part, to this with the gold elevator. I don't know what's downstairs from that, but that's different. But in this story, this is called Old School, and in the story we have Chad and Greg take a big road trip, and here they go through places from Wisconsin to Iowa. We've got the big I-80 truck stop, like the largest truck stop in America, the future birthplace of James T. Kirk, which actually rests. This sign is in somebody's backyard in Riverside, Iowa. Somebody built the Field of Dreams after the movie or whatever. And then we also did a Road Trip Nebraska edition, and Minden is a real place where you've got the frontier village that's there.
I've been there.
The archway the Nebraska archway thing that you actually, this shows up in About Schmidt, which I actually referenced right here. And this is one of my favorite bits right here. So this is actually based on a picture. There is a town called Lemoyne, and this actually tells kind of the story of it in the thing. But in Lemoyne, Nebraska, the original one is at the underneath the bottom of Lake McConaughey. And it was one of those where they built this reservoir and they flooded the whole thing. So they moved the town north. And this outlook looks out to the whole, to old Lemoyne. This is New Lemoyne looking out to old Lemoyne at the thing. And then we have one of our little subaquatic characters, Croak, show up there in a little teaser. And this building here is actually the library in Alliance of Nebraska, which also plays a factor in our story. And here, this is Cortland, who guest starred in that story. So, and he's this is actually Cortland inside of a computer. That's a whole different thing. That's not real.
I thought it was visiting Carhenge.
No, Carhenge is right here.
Oh, there you go. Yes,
that's the next. Right. That's the next slide is actually Carhenge, which is I don't know if you guys know, is a thing in West Nebraska. Somebody built a replica of Stonehenge out of old cars.
I've heard something about that.
It's amazing. Here's a photo of that I stole off the internet of Carhenge at the summer solstice. And it's actually aligned to the summer solstice. This is sunrise at Carhenge on the summer solstice. So, and this is in Gering, which is just south, the town just south of where I live in Scottsbluff. This is the old country kitchen, and right now it's a Chinese restaurant. But this is where Chris and I decided to create our comic universe. Was sitting in the country kitchen. So I wanted to add that one as well.
One of the fun things about comics is that if something doesn't exist anymore in real life, it can in your comic continuity. Yep. There's no reason you can't do that.
Yeah.
And this actually back here, this is that's Chris and I had Rolf draw us in the background too. Because this is actually set, this part of the story is actually set in July of the year that we came up with the company. So that was in the same thing as, so we could have been there at the time. So we went ahead and I had him draw us in there for that story. So like I said, we have a lot of fictional cities that are rooted in real geography, right? And so this is a Fremont city in Colorado, which is our big Colorado town where Expositioner and a bunch of other stuff goes on. And Greg and his pals took a visit there. And in its fictional history, this is actually this spot of land where Fremont would really exist. It's a little cleft, a little in the mountains, and you've got a little flat space in the mountains, and then on the other side is Colorado Springs. Then up here is Denver, and so we actually have a spot where in our universe they built a city in the middle of the mountains.
Oh, nice! And
it was originally built as a kind of a town of debauchery to cater to miners in the area. And this is Brian Lusang drew this for the Legend of Fremont City, which is a story in our second anthology on that. This is the coast of San Rafael. But in our universe, San Rafael, which is on the north of the San Francisco Bay, in the real world, is in here too, but in our universe, it's called Presidio, and it has a very altered history. This was actually drawn by gal Megan McCune, who did a bunch of art for us back in 2006, and so that's that whole thing. But we based it. We went through and actually, if you'll check out our Twitter, we actually have a little bit of a write up on San Rafael / Presidio. And how history is different on that one. So now this is a story from last year. This is Rapunzel, who is a character from Forces, all grown up and working for the Department of Education as an agent. And this story set in DC. And this is actually one of the things And I am going to forget the dude's name right now. I can't believe it. Oh my gosh. The Skinny introduced me to him. He's the same guy who did the Otis Stein book, and I just can't remember his name right now.
Yeah. I only know him as Skinny.
Yeah. Well, Skinny's Matt Veely, but his artist also did this, and I'm embarrassed that I cannot recall his name at the minute. But I'm telling you guys, his work was so good. He went ahead and I got him all kinds of photo references of DC because it was really important to me to have this feel like being in DC, because I've been there several times, and it's got its own texture to it. And he did a great job of matching it, and I'm so upset that I can't remember his name right now. But yeah, this is a subway station, just off of and he just got it just spot on, but it's just off of the main Capitol Plaza, and he just nails the look and the feel of it. So I just was super glad about that. So this one here, another a tidbit, and this is where I'm going to wrap up with two more pictures, and I know I'm probably boring everybody spitless, but this was actually drawn by my son Taliesin.
I like that.
Oh yeah, isn't it great? So
that's really good.
Chad, who is one of our characters from Forces in Forces is set in 2004 through 2006, and this is Chad all grown up as the hero, Chad. Chad the Tinker, and this series is a giant mutant paddlefish.
Oh jeez!
And you see the sign over here that says no whaling. In Nebraska, it's illegal to go whaling.
I think it would be impossible.
And
something seems off there.
The books, and there's a lot of question about why that rule exists as a rule. And one of the theories is that when the settlers first started collecting around Lincoln and Omaha, the Missouri River had these paddlefish that they weren't, of course, this big, but a paddlefish can get to be, I think, like 8 feet long. But they're not that. They can get really big, but they're not, monstrous. But that was in like the 1860s. And so some people think that the whaling law may apply to fishing for these big paddlefish. But nobody really knows. But so I had Tolly draw this giant mutant paddlefish to make a little joke about local history with that. And so that's what this piece is. Now this page here was drawn by Carl Toons, and this is Chad riding into Lincoln, which is the first part of a story that hopefully will get done. August 14, 2006 is the date for it, and this is an actual road that goes eastward into Lincoln. And although in this universe it's a 2-lane, he'd be on the wrong side of the road entirely.
Yeah, I was just thinking he's on the wrong side of O Street.
Yeah.
European.
Yeah, there you go. Nah, he's just a rebel. But but now we're I just love the layout of it so much that I was like, yeah, that stays. That's perfect. So yeah, that's this whole story, which, like I said, someday we're going to tell. It's the story of Chad's time in Lincoln in 2006 as an apprentice hero. And so I just have to get together the funding for it.
That's half the battle.
Oh man, I tell you what. So yeah, but those are some things that I just, like I said, I love the idea that geography can give flair to characters. It can make it feel grounded, but it also allows, I think, a lot of creativity, because it gives you the opportunity to tie into both inform people that aren't familiar with an area, but also to reach people that are familiar with an area with something that is intrinsic about it.
I think I should give a shout out to one person I forgot to mention. There was a comic on Comic Genesis called School Spirit. I don't know if you ever ran into it. Mm-hmm. It's done by Daniel Vonderweff. I'm going to butcher his last name because I don't have it right in front of me. But he's a school teacher in Perth, Australia. And what made his comic so interesting is that he had so much local flair, colloquialisms, just basically things that made it, without intruding into the plot, which is about sort of like a Casper the Friendly Ghost story set in a public school. But I told him before, I thought, what I love about his comic is that it has so much flair of just set in rural Australia, a place I hadn't really even read much about, kind of thought, well, he basically just pulls from his own life because there's a school teacher out there. And I thought, well, what around me in Lincoln, Nebraska could I pull from just to give my comic a little more of a setting that make it different from any other comic that might be set in a similar city.
So, yes, to correct my grievous error, the artist who did the Rapunzel story is Carlos Rodriguez, and his Twitter is in the chat. So sorry, Carlos, I can't believe I'm an idiot. Except
Hey,
I live my life, so I have to come to expect it.
You fixed it. You got it.
And School Spirit was a great thing. And once again, this is an example of like using geography to introduce somebody to something new, right?
Yeah.
I've had the good fortune to become acquainted with Mike Barron. Did the Badger, did Punisher, did the Flash for DC Comics. Of course, Nexus was his creation, and or co-creation. And one of his projects for DC that was one of my favorites is a mini series called The Butcher, and it is about a Native American, Jim Butcher, who was a special operations like a commando, and had done some been trained by the CIA, all kinds of stuff, and he ended up his father was murdered, and so when Jim retired, he went to find out who did the killing and to kill them right back. And it's it's an awesome story. But one of the things that was so cool about it was that the place where Butcher was from was like near Bill, Wyoming. And, I've been there and the Thunderhead, natural grasslands and all that kind of stuff. And so that Eastern Wyoming territory, he worked it into the story and it felt really organic. And so I got to meet Mike and I said, how did you do a lot of research? Did you talk to people? Did you read up on it? And he's like, used to go motorcycling out there. I've ridden all around there. And so I was like, I got it. You got it in your blood. Right. And so that was one of the things that it felt authentic to me, coming from my dad's from, Douglas and from Lusk area. And so like, I've been out there, I've been in the dirt, and I have it too. And so I was able to connect to it that same way. And I think that that's one thing that geography and stories lets you do. And even if you haven't been there, if a writer or an artist can get that feeling for it, can get those places, other people can start to associate with it too. And I think that's something that even if you're dealing with fictional places, they can still have a tie to real history, and that can still be a lead into it. And that's one of the things that why we've gone that way and why I love it. So I was hoping, I was really hoping to have Tonic Mole on it, because one of the things, if anybody has read Saving the World, is it's a rural Kansas, a rural Oklahoma, like those cities that are in the middle of the plains. That's the kind of thing that Saving the World is built in. And if you've ever been to Tulsa or Oklahoma City or Topeka, you know what the texture is. And so he does a really good job of having it in there. And he had him on the show a while ago, and he's like, I said, why'd you do that? He said, because no one else has heroes in Topeka. But if there are superpowered people all over, they're going to be them in Topeka and Kansas City and wherever else. So I said, that's what I'm going to do. So he tells it better than I would, though. So I was hoping. So
the dodgy internet.
Oh, I tell you what. That's just the way it goes, though. So
it is. So especially this time of year.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, it is nearly 9. I've said everything I can think to say about it. So Matt, when have we come up with any plans about when we're going to get back to the regular updates for Out at 5?
I kind of have to know what's going to happen next first. Then my muse isn't calling me back. But I think one of the best things really is that I'm not doing it 5 days a week anymore, because there was a time it was I did a lot of I had a lot of comics that had things, storylines, plot holes, things that I did because I had to do something. And I thought, you know what, if I ever do this again, I'm going to make sure if I run out of ideas, stop until I have one again.
Yep.
So,
well, there's lots of archives. Go back and read them. PortlandComic.com, outat5.com, right?
That's right. I've been doing this for 20 years now, or almost 20 years. It'll be 20 years next spring. So, yikes. And yeah, I was just looking back. I think, pretty much. Sometimes I have to go through my own comic in a binge just to make sure I remember what I wrote before and it's like, did that character say that? Did he do that? Okay.
Yeah.
My own continuity is something I have to go back and research.
I totally understand.
Yeah. Well, Matt, you've seen my timeline.
Yeah, I have. It is extensive.
It is extensive. And I still have to go back through Forces specifically because we've got like 700 pages of that book. Mm-hmm. So
it builds up quickly.
Oh man, I tell you what, doing the webcomic thing, especially there were several, we haven't, it's been hit and miss since 05, but that's why we only have 700 pages. But there were several years where we were hitting 2 updates a week pretty regularly. So, yeah, and it was just a page, but still, it's a lot.
That's still a lot.
It's a lot.
Either way.
Yeah. And it only,
I'll tell you what. Oh, I was just gonna say I'll definitely start drawing again once real life is less interesting. When real life is easier than the stuff I put in my comic, I think it's time to stop.
Yeah. There's something for that.
Yeah,
so
that says a lot.
And Nick, of course, we were talking at the beginning of the show. Demon Hunter Raven is just doing great guns on the Kickstarter, and you're looking to ship that. Are you doing all of the fulfillment at once, or what's your plan with that?
Yeah, so on there it says November, and that's just for worst case scenario, like everything goes down in the garbage chute all at once. But my real goal would be by the summer to have everything out. I'm like at that halfway point where everything is being redone or has been caught up to where it needs to be, because I got a deal for comic shops, which is still getting information. I don't know exactly when that will be. It'll probably be like August, because I want to get the Kickstarter fulfilled before comic shops even see a thing. So I had to go back and like recolor a bunch of stuff and update a few things, just because it's going to be going out to a much wider audience now than and I've gotten some great feedback. Like the last 2 projects that went through, like guys came up and said, hey, I see I see what you're going for here, and I think you could boost this up. And then I've also brought on a few more people to kind of help bring this project into a whole entire different realm. Like this guy right here, this Matt is going to be helping write a chapter called Knights and Demons, and I'm really excited about it because he came forward with me and he saw a hole in part of a story, which is nice because I'm not a writer, I'm an artist, and I'm trying to dabble in too many areas. And Matt came up and he said, hey, I see some potential here. And so we started chit-chatting, and so the next thing I knew, I'm like, we're working on a story together and we're putting something together, and it just kind of happened that way. And it's a really cool story. I can't wait to share it with you guys. We'll be actually probably sharing that information like in a week and a half from now, like the full disclose of what it is. But it's got a creepy factor. It's got a little horror element to it. So I think
as you think it would with a name like Knights and Demons.
Exactly.
I'm just saying.
Exactly. I'm excited because it's going to have some really ghoulish things that I get to draw on it, and it will. I don't know, it's creepy, but it doesn't come off that way at first. It slowly builds into that, and it just goes nuts. So I'm excited to play with that.
Yeah, and it's got 2 chapters, and the first chapter is one thing, and the second chapter is a little different.
It just goes off the tracks. Like once you hit that one moment in the story, it's just that baby goes into full gear.
Yeah,
it hits.
It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun.
But his story is also going to be collected in the volume 1 part, so it will be in there, and then you'll be able to get it in the comic shops way later. So, I'm excited. It's going good. It's doing things I was not expecting. So now I have to kind of evaluate some of my plans later on and get in contact with some people because I'm a little in over my head.
You're becoming wildly successful like that. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, we all wish for that, and then when it finally hits, you're just like, oh, my inbox is always full now. I don't know what to do.
Well, I'll just let everybody know that, of course, my other writing can be found both review blogs and fiction writing at idealcomics.net. And if you want to support the dream, you can give to us on the Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you can get all the new character updates as we put them together. You can see previews of the webcomic as we're getting the archives colored. For $3, you can, as soon as we get digital releases, those are going up on the Patreon as well. So you also can check us out on Global Comics, and we are going to be we do have a shop at our website, and it's not clicking on. What the heck? You can buy digital comics there, and we're going to be getting some other shops going on here too as well. So that's kind of the thing there. So if you like the idea of universes, you like that kind of texture, or if you just want to support the dream, there's lots of ways you can do it. But we hope you can got some fun out of tonight's conversation of geography. And Matt, I'm sorry, you were going to say something?
Before we go, I just wanted to answer Neostar Productions' question.
Ooh.
He had I didn't see that in the chat. It was full screen, but I wanted to just share this with them before we go.
Oh.
He set up for him. He went Warren Buffett, so I pulled that out of the archives.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
There you go. Proof positive.
Proof is in the pudding.
I'm not going to mention my opinions on Mr. Buffett at the moment.
He was really nice when I bumped into him. I mean,
well, yeah, I
made sure to wait until he was done eating dinner before I asked for a picture.
And that's true.
Yeah.
And this is a fact. Thank you, Neo. You're a chief amongst men.
Neo is everywhere. I don't know how he does it.
He's a good guy. Actually, if you go check back to the archives, I had him on my Saturday stream over Christmas, and we got to talk about Riser Man and blaxploitation movies. It was fun. So
I need to double check that.
Yeah, it was fun. So there he goes. Well, I'll be damned. No, it's just Warren Buffett. You're fine. Okay. We should call it because I want supper. So everybody,
all right.
Thanks for tuning in. I know it's a shorter show tonight, and it's entirely my fault. It was so late that Doug couldn't come, and Tonic's internet quit. So that's also my fault. Well, Tonic's internet is not my fault.
I'll say it is anyways.